It's my pleasure today to introduce the Kentucky Department of Veteran Affairs Deputy Commissioner, Margaret Plattner. She was Lieutenant Commander, retired USN. In March 2009, Margaret Plattner assumed the position of Deputy Commissioner. She is experienced and dedicated public servant, having held leadership positions in the state government and the nonprofit sector. Plattner served 9 years as a lieutenant commander and intelligence analyst in the U.S. Navy Reserves. During the administration of our former governor, Paul Patton, she was deputy commissioner for the Department of Vehicle Registration in the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. Later, she served as chief executive officer of a nonprofit for women's reproductive health in Louisville. In 1995, Plattner attended the UN Conference NGO Forum on Women in Beijing, China, and wrote Women and International Human Rights Law for the University of Kentucky Law Review Summer of 1996. She received her doctorate of law from Salmon P. Chase College of Law at Northern Kentucky University, a master's degree in international affairs from the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., and is a graduate of Denison University from Granville, Ohio. Retired in Lexington and Northern Kentucky, Plattner is the proud parent of a 10-year-old daughter, Lyndon. She resides in Louisville. May I introduce Margaret?
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that. Looks like the weather cooperated. I'm glad that it did, and it's nice to see all of you out this morning. It's an honor to be here. In his Gettysburg Address, President Lincoln spoke of America's obligation to repay our debt to those who died in service to our country when he said, "It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth." Those are powerful words. As a nation, we carry the legacy of those who have come before us. Thank you to the members of the military who have served, and particularly we owe a debt to those who have served and who have died for this country. Let me tell you a story about courage, service, and remembrance, which I also think is pretty powerful. Major General Mark Graham had 2 sons, Jeff and Kevin. General Graham, I might say, commands one of the largest army bases in in the world. It's Fort Carson out of Colorado. He carries a lot of weight. In 2003, General Graham was a senior officer to the senior U.S. commander in South Korea. As I mentioned, he had 2 sons. They were both ROTC cadets here at the University of Kentucky. Kevin, the younger son, had been chosen as the only ROTC cadet for elite airborne training. Unfortunately, the stresses started to show on Kevin. He was ultimately diagnosed with depression. Very sadly, shortly thereafter, Kevin took his own life. Also shortly thereafter, his brother Jeff graduated and was commissioned a 2nd lieutenant in the U.S. Army. In November of 2003, the same year that his brother Kevin had passed away, Jeff was deployed to Iraq. He left on November 15th. That was the day of his brother Kevin's birthday. He also carried with him Kevin's driver's license before he deployed. In February 2004, Jeff was tragically killed by an IED. In less than 1 year, the Graham family had lost 2 sons. Jeff and Kevin are now buried side by side at the Frankfurt Cemetery. I went to visit the gravesite the other day, and I can tell you it's very moving. Their gravestones are attached to one another. So they were together in life and very close, as I understand it, and now they're together after life. Once this had happened, within a year's time, as you can imagine, the Graham family was reeling. They didn't know what to do. Mrs. Graham decided that she needed to reach out to groups in areas where soldiers were dealing with depression. It was a real issue. After the death of the second son, Jeff, Major Graham realized that he had position and authority to do something about those who were suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome and mental health issues. Let me share some statistics with you that I think are important and a reality that one has to deal with in today's military. In 2008, 140 Army soldiers had taken their lives. The military faces a sharp spike in suicides. General Graham today, due to the loss of his sons, both of his sons, is leading the fight to tackle this problem in the Army. It's admirable. His mission is close to the heart. Military officials, including the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staffs, Admiral Mullen, attribute this increase into repeated deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan and post-traumatic stress syndrome. The Army does acknowledge that there is a stigma around mental health issues, and some may be reluctant to receive treatment. But because of General Graham's work, that may no longer necessarily be the case. Due to General Graham's own personal losses, he decided to turn Fort Carson into a testing ground. Mobile behavioral health teams have been created to work with individual brigades before they deploy to Iraq and Afghanistan and when they return home. In remembrance of General Graham's sons, such efforts will save the lives of other soldiers. The military takes care of all of its soldiers. And one thing that we need to remember is that mental health is just as important as physical health. What connects humanity besides love and caring? I believe that it's empathy, pain, and loss. While one ceases to physically exist in this life, our relationship with our loved one continues nonetheless. It just takes on a new form. Our nation as a family has an ongoing relationship with the lives of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and women. The meaning of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness lives today because of those who served and those who served and died to preserve the core values of this nation. We owe the service members and their families who support them a great big thank you. Thank you.